Hello and welcome to the BNB show. That's right. Seahawks Brendan Nelson makes his epic return here back to the Hawks Nest because we've got a lot to turn over today. Brendan, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. It's good to be back over here, and it's good to be underway with another Seahawks season.
It is. Excitement's just kind of starting to build. You can feel it. I'm feeling now where you go, okay, now I'm kind of waking up here a little bit. I'm getting ready to go here. We're really on. It's starting to get to live action. This is starting to really count here or get close to counting. And we had our first preseason game this past week, and we're just about to have a preseason game tomorrow. And we're not going to do much today. I think Brendan doesn't do a whole lot to do much looking at the future preseason game. It's preseason game. It's going to be happening is what's going to happen. We won't know the parts to really talk over until we get after the action. But we do have parts to talk over still, I think, regarding the Steelers game, because I think that there's been a lot of not only good and bad, but there's also been, some controversy out there amongst the fan base and their divvying of opinions on this game and their outlook of certain things. So I would want to lead right off the top here and asking you, what was your feeling coming out of that game in general, just on the back of that first game where we lose, kind of come up short.
Most of the stuff that I really placed a lot of value in, I was actually really happy with. And when I say that, I mean the offensive line and the pass rush. I thought both those things were good, and that's the stuff that's really valuable. Like I'm trying not to get too caught up in the stuff that doesn't matter that much, like the Drew Lock Geno Smith battle. Even though I want to say even there, I thought both guys showed positive signs. So the things that I cared about were pretty good. I I would say that the things that weren't so good are kind of understandable at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So if as long as you keep your focus to the things that are really worth caring about at this point with this team, I think most of the stuff you come away from that preseason game is positive. So I
Yeah.
was quite happy. I'm sure you've already seen the PFF numbers from our offensive line, and what we saw from PFF matched what we saw watching the game, I think.
Agreed. That's the
It,
point.
it
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, it wasn't where PFF tells us they were great and we watch the game and we feel like they were bad, which happens sometimes. No, the PFF grades backed up what we saw. So that to me is worth a lot more than just about anything else.
Yeah, I agree. And that's always why I say with PFF, it's not there to be the end all be all only metric you use. It's to go in addition to the eye test, because putting those two together give you just a little bit more of a rounded out view as to what's going on, as opposed to just narrowing the view up. And well put on that in the offensive line and how standout they were. It was a little bit like an alternative dimension, wasn't it, Brendan? Like, what are we looking at here? This team's got all these guys down the line, so highly rated, and everyone playing. Obviously, you didn't have TJ Watt, and the Steelers were not, but they had a relatively decent crew out there. And you do touch on, I think, the one part here that's been a little bit of the part for me that I share your feelings on it as far as the quarterback play, and also that it's not that it's a big deal, but people are, definitely screen, noses pressed to the screen type on worrying or wondering about it. And the thing that I was really thrown off from was some of the people's view that Gino was awful and Drew Lock was really good except for that last play. And I sort of have a different view on it with how I see these versus just someone. I mean, I had a poll, Brendan, where they said who played better. And it was Drew Lock won 86% off. You go, how really off? I mean, it was that much of a difference in their games that a poll would be overwhelmingly going to the guy that had a fumble sack that, as I had said at the moment's happening, that's on Drew. The coaches back this up. I've seen other quarterbacks break down the play. They've backed it up. It was on Drew on that play. It's undeniable at this point. So where do you stand with the battle in this game between these two?
Well, I do think that Drew overall did play a little bit better. Um, I know that the fumble looms large, right, and that is on him. But I look at that play and I go, there are a couple of moving parts there. Like, yeah, it's on Drew, but at the same time, if Travis Homer's in the game, I don't think he lets that happen, regardless, because he's Travis Homer. I
Fair
don't think
point.
he allows that to pass. I don't think DJ Dallas allows that to pass because the metrics I saw last year indicated that DJ had actually become a really good blocker as well. So you can put it a little bit on Thompson as well. And I think that Drew Lock just had more scoring drives in him in that second half. He had the 2 touchdown drives. I think he showed the ability to do a little bit more than Gino, while at the same time, I saw more willingness from him to check it down if that's the play that needs to be made. The one play from Gino, and Gino played good too. I want to stress that.
Mm-hmm.
The play that really bugged me was the 3rd and 6, the first third down of the game, where Gino drops back and then he kind of panics and starts, you can't even really call it scrambling. He just kind of starts dancing around back there and then he takes a sack. And I'm pretty sure the check down to Homer was open on that play. And that's the kind of thing that bothers me more than anything I saw from Drew, because that's basically the kind of stuff we're trying to get rid of this year, right? That's one of the reasons why you move off Wilson.
Yes.
So I look at that play and I go, if we're going to have that this year, if that's going to keep happening, then we really kind of have Russell Wilson without all the things that made Russell Wilson good. So I didn't like that because I felt like that was all on Gino. Like, I think Homer was open for the first down. Offensive line blocked great on that play. Gino just has to be more decisive, go through his reads quicker, or at the very least, you can throw it away. It's better than taking a sack, because I can't even call what he did taking off to scramble, because he was just kind of dancing around until somebody got to him. But that being said, it's not as clear-cut as some people are saying. As you said, Gino did play a good game. He had like 2 or 3 drops, I think. He had the play where Fant caught the ball and then didn't even try to get his foot down. So Drew Lock, I do think he played better, but yeah, we should not. I don't think we should dismiss the way Gino played in this game as being terrible. It definitely wasn't.
No, and I think you raise also what was there with Gino and that you saw is also a thing that you worry about, not just from Gino this season, but also maybe if there's a failing trait or a trait to his game that you worry about. It's that indecision. It's that lack of knowing where he's going, have a plan, as opposed to sort of turning spastic at weird, strange moments and being indecisive in the pocket,
Mm-hmm.
like we've heard from reports in the mock game as was occurring. And so you go, okay, well, that means this is something he can't really clean up. It's a part of his game. I lean a little bit more in the direction of saying I think they both played very close to each other in the same level overall at the end of the day. I do believe the sack was on Drew there, where he showed early on in that game, when he earlier on in that game, control at the line of scrimmage. It's his call to make there and recognizing the blitz. The back will pick it up. I guarantee. I give you that. Homer, Dallas, they got it. You're right. But he's got to put those running backs in the position, right? And he's got to make sure he's calling that protection out. That's on him to that degree. And I think that's why they're so thoroughly, we're like, yeah, it is on him to do it there, as opposed to saying, well, the young running back just needs to know where, he potentially needs to go. There's no reason to protect the young running back who's probably not likely to make the roster anyway on it. But that being said, I think they were very close to where they were. I think the fact that if you put those throws, Gino, you mentioned the drops and the Fant where he didn't even try to drag his toe. His day is phenomenally more better statistically. And then he very well has more points he puts up on the board because those drives were stopped. The slant route to Melton and the Fant play down those stopped those drives from having the scoring happen. So by my stance at this point, as I've thought about this a lot, Brandon, I now sit and go, no, I think he had a better game. I think Drew played well. I think you're right that Drew did show you something. He showed you something Gino doesn't have. He shows you a little bit of just a little quicker. I'm willing to make the throw. I'm willing to make the decision. I'm going to let it rip. I'm gonna trust my stuff. I'm not as much of the spastic stuff, but then again, here now, my wonder here on this one, Brendan, is that fumble to me at the end of the game is also the thing that Bronco fans would tell me. That's the thing I worry is that bad fumble, that bad play at the wrong time. Gino spastic, Drew Lock a little bit of the bad play at the worst moment. Am I off on that? Would you say, or is that pretty fair assessment?
No, I think that's pretty accurate. I think that with a guy like Gino, you're going to see more punts, but better a punt than a turnover. But you're also with Drew probably going to see more scoring drives.
Fair
So
point.
I think that sums it up very well. I think that, you have a game like last year against the Saints where Gino I think they scored on their first drive and he basically didn't do anything that whole rest of the game. And yet he somehow avoided the turnover. That's kind of the quintessential like Gino game where, yeah, he's not turning the ball over, but he's also not giving you much of a chance to win the game. And it's kind of weird we're talking about Gino in these terms now because back when he was starting for New York, avoiding turnovers was the furthest thing from his strength. But in this QB battle, yeah, he's clearly, I think, the guy who's going to avoid turnovers better. And we have evidence of this. Last year, 3.5 games, he had 1 turnover that was his fault.
Yeah.
And I I know that Drew Lock has more turnovers than that in him. So yeah, it's definitely more of a gamble with a guy like a Drew Lock, but I kind of would prefer that overall to the Geno thing. But we're going to talk about this soon.
Yeah.
The decision has kind of been made for us.
Yes. Unfortunately, Mother Nature has stepped forward on that particular one. And I was still, to your point, that in favor of letting Drew have a start this next week, anticipating that third game of the preseason is probably going to turn to what the fourth game of the preseason used to be, which is that they're just throwing out there a lot of guys that aren't going to make the roster, that they're trying to give them a look on and help out. And you're not going to see many of the guys at all. So you want to give at least both of them one start each to kind of get a look see is what you're looking at. One other part I want to talk to you about in this game that I think people really were speaking to, and another one I'm hoping to maybe put a little bit of give people some hope here a little bit more than this game might have strung up, and that was the tackling. And the tackling really got hit on, and rightfully so. We were awful in tackling throughout the game. It didn't get better from one unit to the next. It was miserable. What is your take on the tackling issues? Is this an Achilles of our Seahawks this season, or perhaps is there maybe some explanations for this?
Well, I think that it's an expected problem to have at this point, and it's actually a good problem to have because it makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
These guys are not really tackling in training camp. These guys are not tackling that much in the mock game. There's very little of that going on, so it makes sense that hey, they're going to go out there. This is the first time all year they're doing full tackling. So yeah, they're going to be pretty bad at it. That makes sense. That's something that is fixable. That's something you would expect to be fixed over the next few weeks. I think a lot of other teams you're seeing the same stuff in terms of like the tackling is not great. Maybe in our case it was a little more extreme, but I would much rather have the problem of the team missing tackles than say the team not knowing where to line up, the team completely blowing coverages, although we did actually have one of those too.
Yes.
The offensive line getting manhandled every other snap. Those would be the problems that would concern me much more than missed tackling. So
Agreed.
that it's something that's got to be fixed, but I'm not worried about it. And I think it's one of the best problems you can have right now.
And to my eyes, I mean, I do think you should maybe a little more increased on our side of the ball, but I was seeing the same thing from the Steelers too. I mean, they weren't exactly being certain tacklers as well on their side of it. I just think it's harder. Brendan had the rule changes have come in too on this, right? Brendan, you go back years and years, and those guys 2-a-days, full pads, 4 weeks of that in practice. Now you got like, I think 15 padded practices is all you can have in total, not 2-a-days, 15 practices, but just 15 days, I think, or something like it's some ridiculous amount of just small amount of actually padded practices you can truly have. So it's under that environment.
One concession the players get every time they redo the CBA.
I know it's like, that's the one thing they go to, or all these other factors, like, let's have about some better coverage for you guys later on live. How about like, don't let yourselves be thrown around the league as much, a little more guaranteed money. No. Just less practice time. Just less with us in the pads. We'll take that and say, okay. All right, guys. I mean, they're good. You do you. One guy I want to talk about in that offensive line that you spoke about so glowingly a little bit earlier here, and a guy that we've both lamented a bit on this has been Phil Haynes. Been here a couple of years, started out as a left guard here, Brendan. He's played well every time he's been asked to be tasked to go in there. Somehow now he's been moved to right guard. I believe he was our highest rated PFF player in this past game, or darn near our highest rated player. Gabe Jackson's still on this roster. Are we going to sit a young player who's performed every time this year so that we can trot out the veteran who's 30 plus years old and looks like he's on the downside of his career?
Well, at this point, assuming Haynes keeps it up the next couple of preseason games, if he doesn't start week 1, then it wasn't an honest competition, was it? It was just going through the motions.
Yep.
And that doesn't need to be happening. Like, there's no reason to not just let the best man win, especially when the best man is actually young and cheap and has upside and potential. And the old guy, the other guy, the incumbent starter, I guess you would say, is on the downslide. He's clearly not the player he was 2-3 years ago. The way Phil Haynes played on Saturday, if he keeps this up, not even as good as he was in that game, just at a good level, I don't see how you could do anything else. He was our highest graded player. Although I have to say, I don't really understand how PFF does things sometimes. Did you see like the Trevor Penning thing?
Yes.
So he got a 98 in run blocking,
Mm.
25 in pass blocking, and he gets a 90. Explain this to me.
Well, and I had meant to go back and double check this in the deeper numbers on it, but and you can correct me if I'm not wrong on this. It's that he had so many more plays in or in run blocking than in pass protection. So if he's running 3-4 more plays in run blocking than he is pass protecting, but he's having a miserable grade in pass protecting, well, they're going to say that he has quantified. That's just one play versus 4 plays. We're going to measure out the totality of all and put the proper weight against them. That's my guess on it, but it does sound completely ridiculous at first blush, when you read it. And again, we can say, thank you for bringing that up. Dodged a bullet. We dodged a Penning bullet there.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you hear he got kicked out of practice 3 days in a row?
Yeah, that was early for starting fights because he's doing the same crap he was doing at the Senior Bowl, which is playing beyond the safety. Players know it. That's why they get in the fights multiple times, same day over with the one guy. You're going past the line. You're going to injure somebody here. We're all professionals and having to try to protect ourselves on the practice field. You're a first round pick. You're not a bubble player. Keep it in line here. And again, it's a little bit of, like I said, that Brendan, the whole run gun mauler thing. Yeah, that's all great, but it's a little bit of like the same guy who gets the truck with the big wheels on it. And he's like overcompensation. And what is he overcompensating, Brendan? For the fact that the guy can't move his feet. He can't mirror in pass protection. He's got a miserable kick slide. He looks like a little bit of a wonky athlete in those moments, even though he's actually a good athlete. He just doesn't, he's like a good athlete that can't dance. And he can't do it out there on that edge. And that's why I didn't want any part of him, Brendan, is I knew he could run block. But we're not trying to build the 2015 Hawks here,
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the only way that grade makes sense is if the Saints ran like a wishbone offense where they ran the ball on every play except for like 2. So I got to figure out how they get to that. I got to figure out how they get to that grade. That just doesnn't make sense to me.
But, yeah, if it's not that, then it's unexplainable, Brendan. If it's not that it's a matter of the 4-1 player mark or something like that, then then there is something absolutely ridiculous in the way they're putting their stats together to come out to that. And I don't, I'm not sure. By the way, I think the Saints could be trying to do that with this pick. I think that they acknowledged in his selection, they're like, well, we still got a great offensive line that can run block. We got our defensive-minded head coach now here to take over for Sean Payton, and we're going to just run the ball and lean on our defense. I think they're going to try to do that a little bit more, and they've already been leaning that way in recent years with end of Drew Brees' career and what they did with Jameis last year too as well, and kind of just keeping him protected. So,
Kamara did push off his suspension, right? He's apparently going to play this year, so they could.
I never know what to say because like Goodell can be so random about this stuff. Is he, or could Goodell still come in at the 25th hour right before the year and be like, yeah, we're going to do 3 games on him. Or wait till week 6 where he's like, we've done our investigation. We've made this determination. And he can swing that gavel at any point. Doesn't require evidence, just requires simply getting arrested in itself is enough to basically it's guilty till proven innocent as far as the players are concerned in this respect. But once again, something they gave up in the CBA negotiating process so that they could get other things. Actually, they didn't even do that for other things. They just gave it up. I heard players talk about this. They were just angry at all these guys doing off the field stuff that was making all the rest of the players look bad. And so the leaders of the league, so to speak, got the players on gear and they went to Goodell and said, here, you just take this out because we don't want this anymore. We don't want this to be what we're associated with. And they regretted it. Those guys regretted doing that and handing him that big gavel. But
yeah, it's led to a lot of things that just don't really make a whole lot of sense.
No, it's been chaos. How did our rookie corners hold up to your eyes?
They got beat up a little bit, but it's a good experience for them. I'm not worried about it yet. I will say this. At a certain point, it stops being good experience and it's just you losing your confidence. So I don't know where that line is, but there is a point where if you get beat up too bad, you're going to lose your confidence. And I don't think we were there in that game because I saw several plays where both guys actually hung tough. I think that Kobe in particular needs this because with recent occurrences, I think the deck has been kind of cleared for him to potentially get on the field early as a nickel corner. We'll talk more about that a little later, but he needs this. And yeah, I don't think either guy played well. I know you're talking about Kobe and Tariq.
Yeah.
They both got beat for touchdowns, although Kobe, he's got pretty good coverage there. I can't get that mad at him for that. But I do think that they have a lot to work on, and that's totally fine. That's totally understandable. But hey, it's going to happen, especially with a guy like Woolen. The announcers were even talking about how he had never played defensive football until like 2.5, 3 years ago.
Exactly. That's one of the reasons we've projected to give him a year out minimum for Hawk fans, and to just tap the brakes, have some patience. It was nice to hear Brendan. He did bounce back within, I think it was yesterday's practice or the day before, where he did pick off Drew Lock in practice. So at least he is still continuing to flash out there on the football field. Boye Mafe, 2 sacks in this game. All these comparisons were coming out of camp, Brendan, saying, "Oh, just like Cliff Averill." I was going, man, what a lazy comparison. I was sitting there going, that's so lazy. You guys just grab any old player that's in the 50s jersey who looks similar. Come on now. And then he got the first sack with the straight up tomahawk chop coming around the back edge, and I was like, that's Cliff Averill. So it was really kind of a little eerie to me on just that movement, kind of that waddle body kind of way that they move with their, I don't know. There was just something that to me was sort of striking a little bit to mind of a bit of a Cliff Averill there. What did you think on those sacks? Did it pop to you? Did you think they were just, easy peasy sacks, or would you say, oh no, he's flashing you true ability here?
Oh, I'm seeing ability. And the most important thing that I'm seeing is the false steps are starting to get worked out of his game. I'm not the first person to notice this, of course. It was all over Twitter the next day. People were, throwing a party over it because it's such a big deal. But at Minnesota, that was the thing that held him back from greatness. He had false steps in his get off at the snap. He would take 2 more steps than he needed to, which would make it would take longer for him to get to the backfield, get to the quarterback. And those fractions of a second are huge. But in this game, people were looking at his get off on the snap, and you didn't see those false steps. So whatever Cliff Averill and Clint Hurd and anybody else working with him is doing, it has had an immediate effect. And that makes me feel a lot better about the possibility of him being able to contribute this year. I'm not expecting like 10 plus sacks, but now I'm like, maybe he can get to like 6.
Yeah.
5.5, 6.5, somewhere around there.
It certainly looks possible after that game. And I'll tell you, if you're going to have a problem in your skill set as a pass rusher with my first step, I've got the quickness, but getting my first step footwork down is just a little dodgy. Going to a guy like Cliff Averill, who served as a consultant for the Seahawks and other young pass rushers, who I think you're right. I think probably has here too. One of the best all-time Seahawk get-offs off the line of scrimmage from the defensive line, right? Just absolutely lightning quick out of his stance, and no false. Talk about no false steps. He knew his track. He knew exactly the angle he was going to take, and it was always a challenge for those tackles over on that edge to deal with. But it was just odd to watch to me too, because he looked a lot like him, and that was Averill's thing too. Was always he could get that strip sack. He get that even if you cleared him through the pocket, and you felt like you got the quick guy through the back end. He always got those arms over that we could still rack it through. And one of the reasons, again, we said with Mafe, he's one of those special guys, 6'4", 33-inch long arm. This for 4'6", 40, 1.5 split. That's where that stuff kind of comes in and helps out. I thought it was Shelby who got it, Brendan. I didn't even, that arm was so long on the play initially on that first strip. I thought it was, Shelby with the play. He's good at that. That's what he does. But no, it was Boyard coming through. Yeah. Running backs looked really good. We're going to talk a little bit. When we get to our injury side of things here soon, we'll talk about the Kenneth Walker situation. But did you feel overall good on the backs? Look good to great, basically.
Yeah. I would be cautious with some of this stuff because we are playing some Steelers backup players. But Agreed. We've seen the Seahawks look bad against backup players in previous years. So the fact that it was pretty much every running back who played in that game did something productive. It tells you that there's a system in place with this offensive line that is making things easier for them rather than one guy being Superman, which is cool. And, going back to the Phil Haynes thing, when he came into the league, I think the strike against him was he's not a very good run blocker. And I think that's why he didn't get to play. So he's come a long way to where he is now getting, I think he got like a 96 in run blocking from PFF, opening up big holes pretty much every play. We were talking about that in my Discord. And I think that whatever happens this year, we can safely say that this running game should be a problem for opposing defenses.
Yeah, and how about I'm doing it from the one tech too, Brendan? You think about it to just to build on your point on that. Struggles as a run blocker from the left guard position, taking on 3 techs. We've put him over here now at the right guard, taking on 1 techs. So he's taking on those run stopping able defensive, the most run stopping able of the 2 defensive tackles on your defensive line. And now he's in that game driving those backup or not. It is encouraging to see him do. And again, Brendan, he was doing it last year. He wasn't run blocking as much in the Packers back in 2020 or whatever when we were in the playoffs. But last year, this was all showing out as well. And it's going to be interesting to see if he does continue. Like, the good way to put it, competition is not real here. If Haynes doesn't ball out the next couple of days and then, be given that mark. So anything else jumping out in this particular game to you on any kind of item of note?
Even though he was graded poorly for pretty obvious reasons, I did think that Darrell Taylor was present constantly in the backfield, which is definitely encouraging to me. Mostly it was just missed tackles with him, which again, that's not surprising. And you wouldn't expect it to be the problem that it was yesterday when the season actually starts. I saw Shelby Harris do some positive things. Poona Ford, a lot of people in my Discord and on my stream chat, we're talking about how Poona Ford actually looked pretty good too. And watching the game back, I noticed him a little bit, which is good because he's kind of in a weird limbo with this new defense. If he can play good, that definitely helps. Other than that, not a whole lot else.
In rewatching, did you notice, was he doing penetration or was he doing more of the old typical 2-gap stuff? I haven't watched closely on this, where he's holding the line and just kind of waiting, or was he going out there and attacking into it?
I saw mostly the former stuff where he's just kind of taking up space, but he's doing that effectively.
Yeah.
The run defense was not really on point, but that makes sense too because we got no Jordan Brooks, and the middle linebacker spot with no Brooks is really, really soft on this team right now.
Yeah, that was the part you bring that up. That's a good one. Middle linebacker in this game again. Just I know the lazy thing here is to just start screaming to the heavens, Roquan Smith, but it does remain for me, Brendan, just a big worry because Barton didn't do anything to assuage any fears from inside of me here as far as his fit in a 3-4 defense as a Mike linebacker. I hope he can pull it off, but I'm still a little bit worried there that this could end up being one of our. And you're right, Jordan Brooks hopefully stay healthy, but I'm worried still, bro.
Yeah, I mean, you should be. Although I should say, I looked at the snap counts after the game. He barely played. He didn't play nearly as much as I thought he did. So he got pulled after a couple of drives, and the same for a lot of these guys, by the way. Quentin Jefferson barely played. Shelby Harris didn't play much. Poona played a decent amount. The guys who played a lot on defense were Mafe, Taylor, Woolen, Bryant. So a lot of the guys who we didn't see a lot of in that game were guys who didn't play much. So I don't want to pass any immediate judgments, but I think we all kind of know that Cody Barton is probably best suited as like a 3rd down linebacker. He comes in on passing downs. So we kind of already know that, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't any new data. You were maybe just hoping for a spark of life for him to show you something that was, he's a pure fit for this 3-4, Brendan. Look at it. We didn't know. Here he is. Jeffrey at this with a $5 donation says, poor Brando. He's the only one on earth who thinks Gino was better than Locke. What a champ. I know I'm out on my branch on this one. I will own it. I will completely own it, Jeffrey. It's, but I just, to my eyes, again, you take those drops and the fan plate. I'll just give me 3 plays. 3 plays turns his day into 13 for 15, minimum 150 yards passing. I give Brendan the sacks totally on him on that play. That's a minus play there. And he had one other spastic moment too, Brendan, beyond that, where he did the little pirouette Russell move where he got yards from it. I think he got a little scramble, but that was when you're like, that's not you, man. That's not you. But I just lean, to me, just barely edges Drew out. Not by a large mark in this game, but I just give him I do give him a little bit ahead. I give him a little bit ahead. No, that's not bad. I give him a head lead on this, down to the wire.
Yeah. Also, the comment is not true. Pete Carroll agrees apparently that Gino was better. And so does Matty F. Brown. I don't know if you saw him on Twitter earlier today, but he was grinding the Geno Smith tape and he was like, this guy looks good. And I don't think he's being sarcastic. Matty takes this stuff seriously. This is his life. Yeah. This is his job. And he was like, guys, I'm watching the Geno Smith tape. This is going to work. This is going to be good. Trust me.
I've been slightly pushing on this same, but and it's not that I've been out of the lock thing, because it's like you got to pick a lane. You're not this way either, Brendan, I know, but it's not that I've been out on lock thinking he doesn't have the potential in there and that he doesn't bring something that Geno doesn't have. I believe he does. But I believe Geno could potentially be bringing something to the table. And man, I got like a dissertation from a New York Jets fan today on a comment on my video, like literally like 1,500 words on just this very subject itself. Like he just went, and I was like, whoa, oh my gosh. But he's like, he just didn't get the right thing here and that. And this, you watch, you see what happens. And I think he could end up surprising some people. Again, not to say he'll be a star, not to say not top 10, not top 15, but into that middle range if he plays. I wouldn't be completely gobsmacked at this point if we come to find out that is the case, especially understanding he's working within the reduced designs. But Brendan, there's been so many people that do lean on that Drew Lock was better. And again, I think what you're touching on, tell me if I'm wrong here, what really touching on is that it is that component that he's bringing to play. Maybe it's tangible, better leg, but there's something he's bringing that Geno's not there. And I think that's really whether it's the potential of that's what people I think are really tapping into there with Drew.
Yeah. I think there's just, it seemed like the energy was different when Drew came in. I feel like just not necessarily something tangible. The energy just felt a little different. He seemed a little more decisive with his decision making, I thought. So I think that's where that comes from. And I feel it too. I can see where it comes from. I can see where there's just a lack of interest in Geno because there is something kind of boring about the way he plays football. And sometimes that can be a positive thing. It's, throwing the ball right to a defensive back for a 80-yard pick six is exciting, but it's certainly not good football. But yeah, again, at this point, and we'll probably swing to this in a second here, but it doesn't really matter for now because the decision has been made for things that happened not on a football field.
Well, that's a great segue. Let's dive into it. For Geno did start to get some momentum going here, certainly within the fan base, saying, Coach Carroll, it's time. It's time. It's time. But right as he's about to take the bull by the horns, just after Tariq Woolen intercepts him in practice, he gets the sad news that indeed, after, Brendan, he's announced he's going to be the starter in this next preseason game. He is COVID positive. So Drew Lock is going to miss this next game. Don't know how long he's be out. I forget how the protocols work with all this stuff, but sadly, Brendan, this means not only does he out this game, but what else does it probably mean?
It means that it's Geno's job to lose now. He misses out on valuable practice time and a whole game. And by the way, if we're being straight honest here, if you listen to Carroll after the game, he seemed to like Geno a little bit more too. So odds are it was going to happen anyway. And now what would it take for it to not happen? Geno would have to be bad probably in the Bears game. And then against the Cowboys, Drew Lock would have to play at a very high level. Right. You probably need both of those things. So we're probably getting it. It is unfortunate that the decision is being made for reasons that have nothing to do with performance on the field. But I'm also not getting too upset about it when it was probably going to happen anyway.
Yeah. And I think we're both still factoring some point or another. You're probably going to see Drew here along the path here. I would, unless Geno completely balls out, Drew will find his way into an NFL football game at this point. I think to your point on that as well, third preseason game, I just don't think they're going to be throwing the starters out there at that point. And if you're running second, third string offensive linemen up as your starters, you're probably not putting Drew out there unless you just don't care. And you're like, well, if he gets beat up, he gets beat up. He's second string right now anyway. It just doesn't matter. So I wonder if he's just going to get that chance.
You just reminded me, Geno Smith's rookie year, Rex Ryan did that. He randomly put Mark Sanchez out with the third string offensive lineman in the last preseason game. Yeah. And I think he got put out for the season because he got the crap kicked out of him. And that's how Geno got his job the first time.
That's such a Rex Ryan. That's a Rex Ryan thing though, isn't it? Isn't that that's him to his core there, that kind of move to do something like that. And I do vaguely remember that. Like, oh my God. Yeah, I don't think Carroll will do the same thing here with this issue. It's not beyond him, but I don't think he would do it. And I think this is going to, unfortunately, this probably closes the job, seems the job up for Geno now, is we're going to go into week 1 here against Russell Wilson. So we'll come to find out if he does have anything left in there now, Brendan. It's no more conjecture now, Brent. So hopefully Geno understands this is your chance. You got your chance coming up, and we'll see if this shakes out. We can't say for sure yet, but it indeed does seem to show some of the markings of that. Well, we had noted last week, Brendan, and we probably should have been knocking on wood or saying a little spell or calling for some fairies or something, or goblins or something. We said, wow, this team's really, really healthy right now at this point in time. We're actually looking pretty good. Health taking some taking a little bit of hits last week or so, hasn't it? Not necessarily from the game, but just in general.
Yeah, we're getting some guys back though. It's kind of like the scales. We're balancing out the scales, right? We get a couple pieces
Sure.
back, but we can't be completely happy.
No, we can't.
We got to lose something.
Yeah, you got to pay the price. You got to give something
Right.
up. It's like that scene in Endgame where you're gonna, give up what you most love so you can get the stone.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't give up much for LJ Collier, but apparently he's almost back. So you got to. He doesn't weigh much, but you got to put him on that other side of the scales.
Does he get to final cuts?
Apparently, we're digging Miles Adams. Pete even specifically called out Adams for playing well against the Steelers. So maybe there's a scenario where Collier gets cut and Miles Adams ends up as a reserve lineman.
Yeah, Adams was also played good the eye test, played good to the PFF, was also really solid in his score on that. So both those, I'll go Adams at this point. I'll be perfectly happy. And again, remembering that we are going to save $1 million by moving off from Collier.
Yeah,
with the way his contract will work. So it just, to me, makes all that much more sense. The big injury hit that we took, which is not, I don't know what to think on this. I have a theory on this one, Brendan. So we'll see what you got to think on this. But Kenneth Walker has sustained a hernia that he's going to eventually need surgery for. They're going to try to do some kind of treatment right now. And that treatment, I guess, will give him the opportunity to get back on the field this year and play on until he has to eventually get it. What do you think about that? And there's not a lot to think about this, I guess. They're going to have him play. Would you prefer maybe just getting the surgery and have him out for the first, 8 weeks, if that's what it is, 9 weeks, and then bring him back into the midseason point?
I am not going to get particularly into that decision too much. I will say that I did read today that apparently it's not a sports hernia, which is the thing that would hold him out for like 2 months or a month and a half. If that's the case, then I don't see any need to have him go on the surgical table when he doesn't need it. And the message from the team right now is he's going to be ready for week 1. So if it comes out that he's not ready for week 1, then, there's some egg on face. So the fact that they're coming out and saying that tells me that it's probably going to happen. Yeah. So I don't know. I think we dodged a bit of a bullet there. I heard hernia last night and I was like, oh no, because who was the guy? Oh yeah, it was Clowney, the guy who had the hernia while he was here, and it just didn't go away. And sorry about my camera; it's completely freaking out right now. But I do think that we dodged a bullet there. I'm not too worried about that one at this point. So I was ready for the worst after last night, but I think we got a little lucky here.
See, my first thinking was Ivan the Terrible got another one, because the amount of sports hernia surgery, I don't know. I feel like he's just punching guys in the stomach or something, because we've had so many sports hernias through here over the last 3 years. Nick Balleur, you mentioned Clowney had it. I think Doug had it at one point. Maybe there was a lot of guys that we've had that condition here, and I'm probably wrong for blaming Ivan the Terrible, but it's just weird. I can't think of any other team that's had this many. Maybe it's just that their testing is so good that they can catch it or whatever.
Yeah, I want to do a study to see how our preseason injuries stack up to other teams in the NFL, because it seems like we have a lot, but I don't know if we actually do. Because a guy like me, if our third string nickel corner gets hurt, I'm going to hear about it. But if the third string corner on the Titans gets hurt, I'm not going to hear about it. So I want to make sure it's actually objective before I say anything too extreme. But it does feel like things piled up this offseason.
Yeah, a little bit. And I lean more, to me, it's the given history with us, where if you look at us last 5 years, I think we're probably, if we're not the most injured team over the last 5 years in the NFL, we're one of the most. And some of that is, I think, the approach of Carroll being he's conservative, I think, with injuries, and he's always looking to that back half of the schedule where he can pull things together full strength and then be at his strongest at the end of the year. And a component of that is resting guys and getting them fresh, even if maybe they could come back a couple weeks early from that. And that's always going to put us up amongst the league leaders. I think that's why he's kind of a player friendly coach, right? That's why he's also probably, well liked, because he's not going to push you like that in that way. But it's not too bad right now. We're fine. And no dreaded torn ACLs, no dreaded torn Achilles, no tendons torn at this point, no broken bones. Those are the ones that are the season killers. So we're still in okay shape on that.
Yeah, to my recollection, this week, Sidney Jones got back, Rashad Penny got back, Freddie Swain got back. I know Eskridge and Collier are close. They should be back sometime next week. Curhan was back today. So it's not all bad. It's just that Walker was somebody that a lot of people were very excited for. So it's a little disappointing.
It is. And certainly, though, at least Travis Homer and Dallas's performance really at least maybe help a little bit relieve some of that too, because those guys look like they can do. I'm not saying they're going to be breakout guys if you give them the rock, but that they can hold it down. They can give you 4.4 yard per carry averages. They basically have done even up to their career point at this point. So we want Walker back. We definitely are going to need him this year, I think. And but it's good to have again those. This is why you like having that stable, right, Brendan? The what was it, Cerebus? You know what I mean? Got to have that.
Yeah.
Got to have that Cerebus on point.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm actually pretty happy about the Kenneth Walker news today. I thought it was going to be a lot worse. Apparently, he already actually had the treatment that he's going to need for this, and they think he's going to be back week 1. So let's just cross our fingers and hope.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. We got another dono here. Another one from Jeffrey. Thank you, Jeffrey. It says, according to NFL, we're literally the worst team in the league. Sports media is just going to be butthurt with the Hawks this year, I think, for access to Russ in case he wins. Ooh, what an interesting angle on that. Maybe some of this is buttering up to Russ to throw shade at our Hawks. Is the media being completely fair with us this offseason in the way that their evaluation has been of our Hawks, where I've seen us put as worst roster in the NFL, in contention for the number 1 overall pick? I don't know if we probably have covered this at some point, Brendan, but are we really that bad? After one preseason game, watching that team on the field, is this the worst roster in the NFL?
I don't blame them for thinking that. I don't think it's going to end up being true. I think that if you're not somebody who's really plugged into the team, you just look, oh, hey, this team lost their quarterback and didn't really replace him. They lost their star middle linebacker, one of the best middle linebackers in NFL history. They didn't really replace him. Mm-hmm. How can this team not be worse from a team that, by the way, was not good last year, 7-10? We were 3-8 at one point, and then we beat a bunch of really bad teams for the most part at the end of the year. So I can understand why they think that. I don't really have a problem with it, but I do think this team is going to win at least a few more games than people are expecting. We've kind of seen from Carroll that something, and this was a long time ago, but something that he is kind of good at is taking chicken you-know-what and making chicken salad out of it. Mm-hmm. That 2010 team, I went back and looked at that roster. That roster was atrocious. They had so little good going on there. Like, their best player on defense was probably 37-year-old Lawyer Malloy. Lofa Tatupu with no ACLs left in his legs.
Yeah.
Basically just waddling around out there, somehow grinding out one last season before he retired. They didn't have anything good going on that offense that year, except for maybe, I think that was Okung's rookie year.
That was Okung's, yeah. You're right. There was nothing else there. I mean, you kind of trying to. Julius Jones might have still been your running back.
Yeah, at that time. And then we cut him mid-season.
I hated him. He was such a not fun running back to watch.
Yeah. God, I remember we signed Brandon Stokely at some point because we needed a receiver. Like, that team was really bad, and that team won 7 games. And I'm not saying winning 7 games with a terrible roster is some great accomplishment that I'm really hoping can be done again this year, because 7 wins is not really going to do you anything big in the long run.
Yeah.
But I do think there is something to be said here about being able to it kind of makes me think of like what the Knicks did in the 90s. If for the basketball fans out there, they uglied up the game and they found ways to win games like 68-65 because they would just turn it into basically like a boxing match under the basket and a big brick fest, and they just find a way to grind out these weird wins. So I look at this team and I go, they're going to be bad, but I don't think they're going to be as bad as some of these people are saying.
Yeah. I I'm in the same place with it. I'm not expecting excellence this year, but I have a keen appreciation for some of the true, real miserable rosters that exist in this sport. And there's maybe not a ton of them, but there's a good collection of them that you look and go, there's Chicago right now. I mean, what are they working with? Houston right now? What are they really working with? I could pick out like 3 guys out of those teams at points, and that's about it of anything real notable. And I mean, you can name more, but it just, I think those teams will be in so much of a worse place than us. Certainly, we play in a bit of a tougher division. Can't deny that. Paul Third with the $5 donation. Thank you, Paul. I really appreciate all the donations today, guys. Thank you so much. It says, greeting, fellas. What are the chances Geno looks bad against the Bears defense? Is Roquan Smith sitting out? Ooh, great questions. Brendan, you're up first on this one.
I believe Roquan is sitting out because he wants a trade still. To my knowledge, he has not rescinded that. I don't think you would take the field for a team in the preseason when you've basically said, hey, I feel disrespected by this organization. Get me out of here. So I don't expect him to play. And I do think Geno's going to look pretty good against this Bears defense that it was good last year, right? It was a good defense last year, but they lost Khalil Mack. They're down Roquan Smith. I think they lost Akeem Hicks too. Yeah.
Eddie Goldman.
And Sean Desai. Artie Burns. Yeah, and Sean Desai. Don't discount that. I mean,
right.
A lot of people think he's one of the great up-and-coming defensive coaches in this league. So it should be a pretty good opportunity for Geno to be the best version of himself.
I'm with Brendan on this one. I think that the chances are pretty minute that he's going to look bad against that Bear defense. They don't have a lot that they're going to be able to run at you, and he's going to probably play pretty similarly to last week minimum. And if he does, and he gets those passes completed instead of dropped, and Fan not dragging his foot, and it's going to just continue to make Carroll feel like this is the guy to run this show this year. Roquan, again, Brendan hit the nail on the head with this one. You have a contract dispute, you want to be paid. You're not going to put yourself in a meaningless game in a situation where you tear your Achilles or your ACL, and you end up with no bargaining power now to go get that contract that you could probably get still at this moment. Albeit, I'm sure right now there's not a lot of different avenues for him to go because there's just not a lot of teams with a lot of cap space to pull this deal off at this time. Say nothing of being interested in him. So I think. I don't know if unfortunately or unfortunately where you stand on that one, Paul, but I do think Geno's going to look good in this one, and no way if Roquan.
Did you see the contract Roquan's asking for?
Oh God, what is he going for here?
Apparently, it's like $22 million a year, so $3 million more than Darius Leonard, who I guess is now named Shaquille Leonard, and I didn't get the memo.
I love when players do that, like because you get your muscle memory in your brain fit into calling him something, and now you got to try to change, and it's like I can't. I remember when Ron Artest did that. I was like, come on, Ron. I can't do the what was it he changed his name to? What are we supposed to Meta World Peace?
Yeah, Meta World Peace.
Oh my
Meta
God.
World Peace.
Like, come on.
Yeah. Who was the safety we had who did that? We had a safety change his name either last year or the year before.
Yeah, Leno.
There we go.
That was another one pissed me off. No, it's Leno now. Leno? Yeah, Leno. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you whatever you want, I'm gonna just start changing my name. You can call me now Badger. I'm now Badger Brendan. That's my new name.
Okay. I'll do what I can.
And if you could put a fierce before it, that would help things. It'd be like a sir, It'd just be
I like it.
Thank you for the donation there, Paul. One more dono coming through here. I appreciate you guys for this. Very kind. And Randall with a big fat $20 donation. Thank you so much, Randall. He says, when the lock news came out, I immediately had this thought. The team knew he was positive, so they made the announcement he was going to start Thursday. That way they can say publicly they were going to give him his shot. Ooh, a little conspiracy here from Randall. Okay, what do you think? Does that hold any weight for you on your side, Brendan? Maybe that they They knew the public was so on board after that game, was saying, yeah, Gino's fine. Give me some Drew. It's Drew time. It's Drew time. And this would be a way to perhaps get out ahead of that. You need Locke to play along with this one, Randall. That'd be the one thing I'd say. What do you think?
That's my thing with it. Somebody would have, Drew Lock would not have stood for that. Drew Lock would have, I have to believe, gone out and had something to say about conspiring to hurt himself, right?
Yeah.
Like, and also, I mean, do you really present this stuff with no evidence? Do you just say, oh, he tested positive, take our word for it, he tested positive? Like, I feel like you would actually have to come up with some actual evidence of that to present because don't they have like a special exemption for people who test positive where you don't have to put them on IR? Maybe it's preseason, so it doesn't matter yet.
Well, I think he's saying that the team knew he was positive, so they're not saying they're faking his positivity. He's saying that rather than fake the positivity, what it is that they learned he's positive, then announced to the press he was going to start, but then wait another half day and then come back and say, no, he's got COVID now, so he won't start. So it would be a way to sort of, again, if you've got the fan base that poll I ran was 86%. Saying, basically with their voices there, we want Drew. This would be a way. Again, I could see where he's going with it, but I think you still got to get Drew to sign up on that though, and sign off for that. And I don't think either Gino or Drew did it at this point because this year is so important for both of them. They got so much riding on their future this year. Both of them want their honest opportunity, and I think Drew would be. I don't know. Maybe Drew would. It's an interesting theory. What do you think?
I doubt there's anything like that going on there. I think the plan was always to give Locke a start at some point, and you may still see the start against the Cowboys, by the way. But I think it's just bad luck. I'm going to chalk this one up to bad luck.
Yeah, I'll do the same. So I like the theory, Randall. I like a good conspiracy theory. So Barry Sotoro with a $10 donation, 11-6 minimum. Deal with it, Brendan. That's going to be the record. It's going to be the record. I like it, Barry.
If it's going to be that good with these quarterbacks, then that probably means the team is incredibly stacked, meaning that once you find that quarterback, hopefully next year, watch out. That's like, it's kind of like when the Vikings made the NFC title game with Case Keenum. Yeah. And you're like, whoa, if they can get a real quarterback, watch out. Now, it didn't really manifest that way, but it's the idea. I mean, I know I want I want Will Anderson. I want Will Levis. I want these top players. But if we could go 11-6 with this roster, with this quarterback selection, then give me that.
100%, because you've answered so many. Yes, those questions will remain, Brendan, on adding those kind of impact players, and will still be a necessity to what you're building onto the future. But you'll have so many other answers to questions about, does the new scheme work? Has the game passed Carroll by? Are these young players going to be good enough as a foundational piece to move forward? And it's like, yes. Now we have fewer and fewer question marks to really deal with, which allows them to more precisely hone in on them in whatever way they've got to do it. The quarterback thing would remain. I think you bring up the Vikings as a very adept comparison because of the fact that led them, the Vikings, to be in a place where they couldn't go get that quarterback, right? And they have to kind of talk themselves into Kirk Cousins at that time being that little bump over Case Keenum, even though Keenum still has taken them further than ever anywhere Cousins taken them, right? Maybe he had a better roster at that time, but that's the one problem with that again, though that Viking team didn't have 4 picks in the first 2 rounds of that next draft after that Kasem year, right? So they weren't in a position to move up in the draft and do something about that.
Right.
One more donation, Randall, just following up on the last thought we had there, $5. Thank you so much, Randall. Thank you for all the donations. You guys are very kind. If the team administered the test, maybe the team knew before Drew knew. Ooh, Randall going even deeper into the conspiracy. Well, if that was the case, that would then remove the Drew element from it, needing to know. And if you take out Locke needing to know, and here's where I think Randall's coming at this. I'm not throwing shade at the front office for saying this, or Carroll, but they will play PR games at times, right? It's not it's not below them to go down there and do that. You saw this with Sherman last year, where they did the whole, we tried a last minute call. Carroll ran down the runway and he was screaming at Sherman's plane as it was just about to take off. Come back, come home, Richard. Right. And you're going, and everybody's rolling their eyes going, no, you didn't. You guys weren't really wanting to bring him back, or you would have made an offer up until this point. So I think I can see where Randall's coming from with that. I can. This team definitely has been willing to do it. And if he didn't know, that would be a way for that to work if they wanted to. And boy, they do get to come back to the fan base and go, I know what you're talking about now. He's not going to start the third preseason game because we've got all of our third stringers in. I'm not going to put Locke behind third string crew and then make an evaluation on him. I wouldn't do that to Drew. We care for Drew too much. I could see him doing that.
Well, there are only 3 preseason games now, so maybe
Right.
we don't use the third one as a throwaway. Maybe we actually do put our starters out there.
This will be interesting to see if they do. And if they do, obviously, Randall, if you do get Drew back out there and he can get out there in time and inside the protocols, then that definitely kills that theory. But if you don't, theory may have some weight. That's all I'm saying. May have just a tiny bit. I could see it. I can't prove it, but I could see it. Well, we had another deal to talk about here, and thank you again, guys. All the donations, you guys are awesome. Another situation came up this week, and this one had a lot of Hawks fans hyped up, Brendan. I kind of shrugged, and that was the Ugo Amadi being traded for Jordan Arcega-Whiteside. Now, you know what I think.
Is that his name, Jordan? I've always called him JJ.
Is it JJ or Jordan? It may be JJ. It's probably JJ.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I probably turned it in Jordan. He hasn't mattered enough as a player at this point for me to remember his name. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But so I looked at a lot of Jordan's tape coming out a couple years ago. He was in that DK Metcalf receiver draft. The trade comes down to you. You have a chance to take over and pick over it. What's your perspective on this one?
I don't think very much of it now. I'm happy we're moving on from Ugo personally. This is something we talked about all offseason. The guy just did not develop well last year from what I thought was a pretty good 2020. And he also qualified for a PPE bonus that I don't think he deserved because he happened to be out there.
It's legit based on snap counts, right? Like
right.
It's like not on anything. You do, just all you got to do is be on the field and you get that PPE.
Yeah. So I was happy to move on from him. I think we saved like $2.5 million moving on from him. And we were obviously going to release him, right? The announcement even came out that morning before the trade where we were actually going to just let him go as part of the first wave of cuts, which tells you that he was a long way away from being in our future plans. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
But trading for Arcega-Whiteside instead, I think just reflects the fact that we're having injury issues at receiver and we want Gino and Locke and now I guess Jacob Eason to at least have people to throw to, even if those people are not particularly good at football. We just want somebody. We don't want to have to move like Travis Homer to receiver for a game. We don't want to move Noah Fant to receiver for a game. We just need a camp body. So I don't think for a second that Arcega-Whiteside is going to make this team. Maybe he sneaks through to the practice squad and then you can have a big body receiver with some ability on your practice squad. But I don't harbor any belief that Arcega-Whiteside is going to do anything meaningful for this team when the season actually starts.
Yeah, you put it well. I'm pretty much in alignment for you. Somebody mentioned in my chat the other day, it's like you have a box with a bunch of old stuff that's just trash in it, not pure trash, but it's a knick-knack this and it's this. And then you got your neighbor who's got a same box and he's like, it's just a bunch of stuff. I mean, you might find something useful and you just swap boxes. You're just as likely to take the box and throw it in the trash, but you might open the box and find a missing piece to a train set for your, some magical thing that so there to me, it's just a look-see situation. You hit the real nail on the head in the $2.5 million. This is about the fact of having Ugo when you have him on the roster prior as a 5th round, 6th round pick, and the salary he's bringing in those first couple of years at that low end allows you to better manage him on the roster. Second gets to 2.5 for his middling kind of play. It doesn't become worth it to keep that guy on. You can get that kind of level of performance from other areas. right? And I think the practice squad thing too. Sorry, Brent, the practice squad thing too was a keynote part of this, where you're trying to probably see if you can stash JJ on the practice squad. Let's just see if we can roll him through into that. And because they obviously they're still going back and taking a look at their pre-scouting. Like they must have liked him a lot coming out of college, right, Brendan? Because he's not showing him anything on the pro level.
Right. I don't even know about the practice squad thing because I do like our depth at receiver. Pete actually shouted out Cade Johnson, and I thought Cade actually made some plays in that preseason game that made me happy. And you've still got some of the other guys. Like, there's not going to be enough room on this roster for all these guys. I think we're going to cross our fingers on a couple of them making it to the practice squad, like maybe Derek Young, maybe Bo Melton, maybe Cade Johnson, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't even know if there's room for Arcega-Whiteside on the practice squad, but that's about the most I could assume comes of this. I don't think for a second we're going to be able to fix Arcega-Whiteside and suddenly turn him into a good player. So I'm not even really thinking about it like that. I'm thinking about the money we save.
5%, right? 5% he's practice squad or I mean, probably less than 5% making the roster, but 5% even makes the practice squad probably at this point. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would go with something like that. Also, if we waive him, he does have that second round pedigree. Somebody else might pick him up too.
It's true. Some team might want that. Again, big body guy. That's a skill set some teams are coveting and don't have on the roster. So they might, try. But certainly Philadelphia fans were very low on Whiteside. If you look at any of the comments regarding him over the last couple of years from Philly fans, nobody's been. They certainly aren't blaming it on the quarterback play as to why he hasn't ascended. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Did you see the YouTube video that the Seahawks official YouTube channel posted earlier?
Yes, I did.
It's like 37 seconds long, and it has almost half of his career catches.
I know, it's making him look like an all-pro. You're like, dang, this guy can ball. He's making a catch on our Hawks where he gets drilled by the safety, gets 2 feet down. You're going, oh, all right, here we go. And then somebody puts in the comment section, like, how'd they put it? You probably saw this too, Brandon, where they said, like, imagine your team's so bad, you got to put a 15-minute highlight package together for a guy's got 19 catches in his career. It's like, well, they're not wrong. That's they're not off, but yeah, he's not going to make it. This is all about, they must've loved him coming out and they're just like, why isn't he taking off? Let's get a look at him. Let's see if, and again, like you said, another point is we need camp bodies. You need enough guys to run the routes. So
yeah. Some people argued that we should have traded Amadi for a draft pick, but I believe that Amadi with the PPE bonus is not worth a draft pick. So
nope.
Do you agree?
Yes. Who's going to give you a 6th round pick for Ugo and then pay him $2.5 million? What has he done in his play that makes you believe that that's worth it? And, you mentioned the previous year where he did play pretty good, but even at his good state, that was league average. That year of where he was league average from the slot, probably maybe a hair above league average out of the slot, just like a hair, but he was never at a point of being, great or superb. So there's just no value out there for a team to go, well, we'll take a 1-year rental on a player who's middling that we're going to overpay for what reason? No one was going to give you that. So they got what they could. I think if there was a draft pick on the board, Schneider would have jumped all over that. Don't you? If somebody offered him, just said it, he would have been, give me that. Yes. Another $5 donation here. Thank you, Barry Sotoro. He says, this season is Pete's wet dream. 54-46 run pass. Top 3 running game this year. Top 8 defensive scoring equals 11-6. What do you think about Barry's math there? I kind of like Barry's math. I kind of like the cut of his calculus. What do you think, Brendan?
I mean, that's the hope, right? That's kind of how this comes together in the best case scenario. I still think you need that quarterback to win games in the fourth quarter, because no matter how good you are defensively and with your running game, those moments come up where you need your quarterback to go make plays late in the fourth. And I don't think we have that guy, but we can win games that we just control the whole way through. I mean, the young Wilson, rookie contract Wilson Seahawks won plenty of those games. So we could win those. Sure.
So if I took you in my DeLorean time machine and took you to the end of the season, and we got out of the car and it's smoking, right? Lightning, fire trails. And we get out of the car and I go, Brendan, it's January 2023. The Hawks had a 54-46 run pass ratio. They had a top 3 running game this year, and they had a top 8 defensive scoring. They were top 8 in defensive scoring. What would be your belief? I mean, that's because that doesn't give you information about the quarterback, because you're right to mention that. The quarterback is a key point, but I think that this is also a key point of looking at this team and what this team could be if the good factors are as good as they could be. What would you put as that team on that? Or would you say, I have to see the quarterback play, I need to see what he had done around this? Or would just those factors alone be able to tell you enough? This is a team that's that has gone to the playoffs this year, at least, right?
Based just off what Barry lays out in this
Right.
post, I would assume that we won like 9 games. I don't think it would be 11. I would say we have a winning record. Maybe we squeak into the playoffs, but there would be just too many of those moments where we needed a quarterback to come up big and he doesn't do it.
Mhm.
But I do think that kind of production would be enough to have a winning record, but you'd probably get smashed in the playoffs. But hey, maybe in a year like this, there is some real value to even making the playoffs to say, hey, we have a great roster. We just need a quarterback. Maybe we go get Tom Brady if he gets over whatever's making him so emo right now.
I think he's checked out. I just think he's at a point where he's like, dude, I'm 45. My body's hurting. I don't you? I mean, do you think there's a little bit of the player where he's like, man, I came back again. Like he can do it, but
Yeah. Yeah, something's up. Something's definitely up. And it makes a lot of sense. But if he re-retires now, he's going to look like a massive scumbag.
Yeah, it won't be a good look at this point, especially with all the Miami flirtations that occurred this last offseason. You're hearing about him trying to go the owner-player combination thing going on there. So it's strange. But I'm with you. I think it would help winning this year. I don't think it holds you back from still going out and finding your quarterback, because you do still sit on the ammunition needed to move up if that's what you're wanting to do. / you really don't need the game-changing quarterback if you're building this type of team. You just need a guy that can function well within what he's asked to do. So in my point, Barry, I think you're right on the point with 11-6, 54-46 pass. That's a hell of a combination. That means you're not throwing from behind in games at that point. I don't think that you're going to get down 10 points and Perril's just going to keep on running at that point. You're going to have to throw. So if you're at 54-46, that one almost alone would, to me, equate out to 11-6 record, because you're just not doing that if you're a team that's losing and down in football games a lot. But I love your optimism, Barry. I'm hopeful you're right, man. You will be forever known as Barry the Prophet in here if that is the case. So prepare yourself for that. One thing we didn't talk about that you mentioned a sec ago about that game also that was really encouraging to see, our Bo Melton love that we've been giving him was making us look good on that there, Brendan. And then Derek Young, I was absolutely blown away and shocked by Derek Young doing wide receiver things, not fly sweep, bubble screen, give him the ball in space, let him work. He was doing true blue run routes, catch the ball out away from your body. What do you think about those two guys in that preseason game?
Yeah, they came around. Early on, it was a little rough. I think Bo had a drop. Derek had a drop. Derek missed a block on a bubble screen. But they came around. That screen pass on Drew Lock's first play that Bo caught, like looking at that play, that's why I want him as the punt returner. Like that to me looked almost like a punt return. He gets the ball, makes one guy miss, and takes off. Mm-hmm. So that was cool. And yeah, Derek, I think he led the team in catches and he caught a touchdown. I mean, there's clearly something there. There's something interesting there. And this is a great opportunity because I said this a few times in that Steelers game, every receiver we had play is not a lock to make this team. The top 5 guys were all out. So this is a great opportunity. And I thought both guys showed me something with that opportunity. I was happy with both of them.
It would be very helpful for both guys to be able to jump up and overtake, let's say, a Swain Hart in that positioning on this roster, if not a Cade. And we talked about the PPE with Ugo a second ago, and that same thing is not quite kicked in with Swain, but now he is getting into that. What was he now? 3rd year here, and yes. So his salary is starting to rise into that point now, where if you've got a 6th and 7th rounder in your roster who can give you the very same level of performance, if not better level of performance, that's that money saved, money you can put in other places. And so they're developing, and that's going to be very key. But Derek, I was expecting with Derek, and granted, Brendan, we didn't have any film study to look at the Lenore, whatever the college was coming up. We did no game film to look at. Just that small highlight package of him running Cordell Patterson like game. But boy, his route running was pretty on point, and Locke threw him a couple of good. There was some smoke coming off that fire, if you know what I'm saying, with those throws, and he was still able to hold on to it. So I'm very encouraged by those guys. And you're absolutely right about the Bo Melton play, by the way. That's just what a punt returner would do, right? Just a little bit of like shit, just a quick side turn as the guy's coming at you full steam. It's not a full juke move, right? It's just kind of you giving a little bit of a hip flip, so to speak, and got himself free with it. So hopefully those guys can continue to build upon it. Well, we got this Bears game tomorrow here now at home, and we know that Geno Smith's going to be the starter here tonight. I don't know did you get a confirmation that Penny's going to come back and play in this game, or he's just back?
I don't know if he's going to play or not. I don't need him to play. We know what he can do. He's a veteran, but I think he had a 40-yard touchdown run in camp yesterday, so he is back.
Back in a big way.
Yeah, but if we want to get an extended look at some of like a guy like a DJ Dallas, just let him play most of the game. I got no problem with that.
Mm-hmm. I'm the same. I wouldn't mind a little more Dallas in there. We know we got with Homer, but Dallas was certainly showing me something. He's another guy in this game that was a little bit to me of a PFF scratcher, because to my eyes, in the way that he ran, I thought he ran hard. I thought he was always getting extra yards when, if he got 3, he'd get you 6. But he wasn't as highly rated up in this game by PFF in the way they looked at his game. But I thought he was maybe potentially played the best for you in this game of any of the backs. Did you feel the same way?
Yeah, I did. I think there are just some things that PFF does that just don't really make sense. And it kind of just, they're still working it out a little bit, right? Like, an example, Roquan Smith. Have you seen his PFF grades? They're terrible.
Yeah, I did.
I'd be interested to hear them explain why that is. What do they see that makes them think he's worse than Cody Barton? They're literally giving him worse grades than Cody Barton, I think.
Well, and I think that's a to use Cody as a comparison on this, and again to kind of piggyback it off what we were talking about earlier in regards to this with Penning in the New Orleans Saints. I was thinking about the same thing when I looked at Roquan's grade. And again, you know me, I've always got a theory for everything. My theory on this is that Roquan's playing in this atrocious defense that's doing the most they can, right? With the guys they've got to, they're undermanned. They're still going to get killed at times because and their offense isn't doing anything on the other side. So it's like our offense last year where it's just 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. And then your defense eventually gets worn down over the course of the game, even if they're playing well. And then eventually everyone sort of ends up just breaking like the dam on a river. And it's like you have a couple of those moments pop up over the course of the season, especially on a bad team. And now your grade looks considerably horrible. But how much of it was the other aspects building up that where maybe you were balling out through most of that game and you just got wore out trying to cover, I'm not trying to make an excuse for him, but that would be my theory on it, is that with all of those extra plays, Brendan, now it's those flash plays you have are reduced down a little bit more. And now you got more of those totality of those plays, reducing everything down in its impact. And again, when you hit that point, as we saw last year, Brendan, when the defense hits that exhausted point where you see the hands on the hips and guys are woofing and they're getting up slow off the turf. It doesn't matter almost how much talent you have at that point. Like you're sort of shot for the game at that point, right? Like it does reach that stage where, as good athletes as these guys are, if you ask them to go out there 70 plays a game, they're not going to be hold up. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there might be something to that. I think, and I'm not sure, I looked this up, but I can't remember if this is accurate or not. I believe Roquan also had a bad grade his rookie year when the Bears were the number 1 defense in the league, though.
Oh, wow.
Patrick, and then you have like the Patrick Queen thing, right? Where he's literally getting graded like he's a toddler out there. And yet the Ravens defense is still pretty good and the Ravens keep playing him. I'm like, okay, do the Ravens not realize they have the worst player in the league starting on their defense? Or is PFF just way off here? It feels like it has to be one of the two, right?
It does. And frankly, I don't have an answer on that, because there are times teams can try to go out where they're like, the light bulb's going to come on, and they'll do that for what kind of player they'll do that for? First round picks. And that they're trying to, but then you look back at the Ravens, you go, yeah, but you don't need to do that with as good as you guys do in the draft. You're not going to get questioned if you happen to miss on a middle linebacker 2 years ago. No one's going to give you any kind of, you guys have been one of the best drafters in the last 20 years of football. Like that's not going to be held against you. But you're right. That does exist with Queen, where there is this weird way they look at him versus his usage on it. And I would be interested to understand as well what's going on with that. I think you're right too, though. This is the thing I always say at the analytics, why you got to use the eye test. It's not baseball. It's not basketball. It's to a lesser degree basketball. Baseball, it's really refined to me on how you can get your analytics with that. But in football, it's going to be taking time because there's no rule book here into how to assess things. And you don't know what players are doing play in and play out. You don't know what their responsibility is. You don't know what wrinkles are within those defense and offenses sometimes. So it does have to not be given, again, that wholesale weight of this thing carries all of whatever is great is the end all be all of who he is as a player. We were just not at that rate. We're not at that place yet in football, but they're getting closer. They're getting better, I think. And it'll get there. What do you think, Brendan? Another 10 years from now, we're going to be looking back at this time period going, all right, they were refining it, and now it's truly at a spot here that's a lot more.
I think that's probably going to be what happens. I think that I think every team now has an analytics department, and I expect it to continue to advance to the point where 10 years from now, that sounds about right.
Yeah, it just gets better and better. Things always improve, especially with the modern age. Is in baseball and basketball. One other thing, again, just thinking a couple of random things I wanted to talk to you about that I was trying to make sense of. I'm going to lean back and say my answer on this is vanilla. Seahawks ran out of defense, front four in this last game, Brendan. That was 2 defensive tackles and then 2 outside linebackers. So they got their defensive tackles shaded like they would be as a 1 tech, right, between a center and a guard on either side. Or I guess with 3-4 defensive ends, you're doing no 0 tech and 2-3-4 defensive ends, and then basically 2 outside linebackers. We didn't see a lot of blitzing in this game. We didn't see a lot of aggression, which were 2 things that Hurt was talking about and the coaches have talked about this offseason. Are they just are they saving it for Russ? Do they know Russ struggles under that stuff, so they don't want to give Russ any tape, and that this is just running this vanilla to keep the cards close to the vest?
Yeah, I wouldn't expect a lot of blitzing in the preseason. Did you hear the Bill Belichick thing about Wink Martindale?
And I saw Wink was running some crazy stuff.
Belichick did not appreciate it, and he made it known. He was very unhappy with how often Bailey Zapp was getting blitzed.
I can't hate on Wink doing it. That's Wink's game. Wink always is blitzing. So you like, how can you hate on that? That's he doesn't play soft zone coverage. You know what I mean? Like, what do you want as a coach? Like, that's his defense. He blitzes at the highest rate in football. I love him for it. God bless him for it, Brendan. It's a guy with you got to have guts to be a defensive coach like that goes like that. So you want your guys used to blitzing and learning the nuances of blitzing and giving him teaching tape. So he goes, okay, this is how you disguise this better pre-snap. You took 1 step in, he read it. What you need to do is you need to give it a beat on this, and then you come. Give it that 1 beat once everybody's set up. Those kind of things, Brendan. It's always the thing I've harped on with our team and the blitz stuff is that we don't have the teachers here to give you those nuances and to fine tune it. So when you run it, it really does look like you're clunky doing it. You look like a team that doesn't look comfortable doing it. And I don't know. I don't throw shade at that. Teams have been blitzing now for years. Didn't we have a blindside blitz by Dan Quinn, former Seahawks defensive coordinator for the Raiders last year, where it took off Geno or Russell's head? Do you remember that? It was a corner blitz.
Sure.
It was preseason.
Yeah.
But it was like a corner blitz in preseason, and it totally, I don't know if it was Russ, it might have been Geno, but it was one of those ones we were all going like, really, Dan? It was like the second play of the game. He runs a corner blitz. And coaches are doing this now. This has been the preseason. Do you think, or do you think they should just keep it vanilla and hide everything?
I don't have a problem with them choosing to hide everything if that's what they're doing. I'm not thinking too hard about that. I think that especially in the first preseason game, you're going to see things kept somewhat simpler.
What do you think this team's really going to run out that front that I saw in this last preseason game, though, that I you're just describing to you? I've never seen that front here in Seattle before, by the way. I've never seen 2 defensive tackles shaded like 1 techs and then 2 outside linebackers standing up in wide 9 technique. That was new.
I guess it's there for a reason, right? Like, you wouldn't think you would run it in preseason and then say, we're never going to run it again, right?
I wouldn't either, but it's not something I recognize from the Fangio scheme. It's not something I recognize from what Carroll's done previously, and maybe it will work better when you put aggression within it. but it does at times to me make me wonder about trying to, well, for instance, stop the run would be a part of it, a bit of it to it, because you've got some odd shadings in how you're putting players, but we'll see. That's another thing I'm going to be looking for tomorrow, though, is how they're running their front four. And if I don't think we saw a lot of pure 4. Did you see a lot of pure 4-3 in that game at all? I don't remember to my eyes seeing much 4 down linemen.
Well, I mean, I saw the thing you're talking about quite a bit,
Yeah.
and I did take note of it, but I didn't see a ton of 4-3 in that game. You are correct on that front, but I'm not terribly surprised by it, and I'm not bothered by it. I don't think there's
No.
anything wrong with keeping what your actual plans are to yourself.
Certainly. And how awesome will it be if they just unveil this crazy come at you from every angle stuff on Russell for the first time in game 1, and he's just, what am I looking at? He just looks overwhelmed, and that'd be awesome. That wouldn't be bad way for that to go.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hold on. Here we got another dono from Barry. You guys are so kind today. Thank you so much. Barry, another $5 donation says, is Tebow today better than Locke or Geno? No.
Boy. Yeah, no. I think that sums it up pretty good. Tebow at no point was better than Locke or Geno.
Tebow's been the worst throwing quarterback in the NFL in the last minimum 20 years, Brendan. Is that fair?
Yeah, it was like somebody did the Make-A-Wish Foundation and said, I want to be an NFL quarterback for one day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it basically looked like. I remember watching the Tim Tebow stuff play out live, and it was incredible, but no, he's not good.
Yeah. I can't believe how bad for a guy that played that much quarterback through college. And I know the windup was a problem, right? And then he's trying to adjust the windup, which probably messed with his mechanics. But for a guy to get through all of college, win a national title, win a Heisman, and a lot of that was done with his legs. I get that. But boy, to be so inaccurate with such a long delivery and to not have any velocity either. He was the trifecta of physical missing of traits of what you would look for in a quarterback, which was just brutal.
Right.
Just brutal. Well, I think we covered most end-to-end spectrum. Anything I missed on this that you want to cover today on this?
No, I think we did a pretty good job, man. I think we covered it all. Just ready for this next preseason game to get more stuff to get more stuff to figure out.
We are going to get a little more clear picture here. And again, with 3 preseason games, it makes these games, I think, Brendan, matter just a little bit more now. And that also definitely depends on hell. If there is that third game is treated like the fourth game, then this one is even more, I'm not going to use the words monumental, but just the importance is so much more. I think you're tracking on the Haynes thing. I think is one of the big stories, obviously beyond the quarterback stories that we're going to watch here in this. And if he can continue to play like he is, because I think, I don't want to speak for you, but I think we're both encouraged by him and hope for him to get on the field, because we've just, I don't think he's been sold short or anything, just that you think he's earned his opportunity, right? Is that a fair point? That he's at this point, if he continues to ball it's not just been this year, it's been his whole time here and what he's done.
Yeah, he's absolutely earned this. And based off everything that I'm seeing, he's the better player right now. So if he doesn't win the job, it kind of makes me think of that year, 2017, when Kason Williams was doing great stuff in the preseason.
Yeah.
And some Seahawks fans are still hung up on this. Kason Williams was one of our best players in the preseason, and then he didn't make the team because we had a selection of guys who we thought were better based off things that were, preconceived notions. And some Seahawks fans have still not forgotten that. It felt like we had already decided who was going to make the team before the training camp. And what happened in the training camp and preseason wasn't actually something we were going to look at for educational purposes. And that feels so far removed from the team that signed Matt Flynn to a contract and then immediately benched him for Russell Wilson because Wilson looked better.
And I think what you're saying too is it was more beyond it being a local guy this was happening to, more beyond it being a guy that was happening to who seemed to have earned a job, as Kasem definitely had. And I agree with that thing. He had earned the right to make the roster at that point with what he showed on the football field. There was a bit of a canary in the coal mine to what you talk about in the respect of you felt like there was a losing of their way a little bit at that point in time in the situation. And maybe we were starting to have our eyes really getting drawn to it with these type of things where you're going, this doesn't feel like that competition is king and guys are just battling it out and banging heads, and every play is they're fighting for their life to be out there and start and to get snaps. That feeling doesn't seem to permeate this team like it had early on. Is that kind of fair to say on that it's the same kind of, that's what we were feeling at that time. And that indeed had been what we had seen beyond that, right? It wasn't just that case and situation. We were seeing it then replay out over the course of a couple of other situations. And it just seems like that's a place where the team loses itself if it doesn't have that as a component in their philosophy.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes it doesn't feel like the best man wins. Sometimes it feels like the guy that you wanted to win wins. And I think we all know what produces a better product at the end of the day.
Right. Well, it's that same mentality too that takes you to reaching on a player in the draft rather than letting the value fall to you, right? Because you get fixated on this one position or this one guy rather than how did the board fall to us? How did the value fall to us? Who's the best player to take? And that's why it's such a, when they misstepped on that, it was, again, microcosm for other bigger problems at play that have at this point hopefully been cleaned up. They cleaned up the draft. He's got to clean it up now in the field get back to that competition, letting it rule the day. And if it does, Phil's got to be given his chance here. Brendan, he's got to be given a chance because I think he's going to succeed in it if you do. And God, if they could just move him to left guard and Damian back to right guard, but that's hoping for too much, isn't it? That's me being greedy.
Yeah. Although, hey, Damian played really well at left guard in that Steelers game. Maybe we're on the right track here. I don't know.
He held up pretty good in that. So I'll give you that. Maybe second year in a new position, so to speak. Maybe he can finally kind of fully click in over there on that side of it. And certainly he's heading into a potential contract year here, Brendan, which we don't talk about with him, but that contract years are always good for football players and getting their best performance on the field. Randall with the $5 donation here. Brendan, what are the odds Disley gets to 1,000 yards? Asking for a friend.
0%. I'm going to put the kibosh on this one right now.
I'd love to give you a 1% on this, Randall, but I'm leaning to, I'll go 0.5% because there is at least got to be a chance, right, Brendan? I mean, if there's a 1,000 times this season plays out, there's probably one freakish year within there that Will gets to 1,000 yards. But Fant's going to eat up a lot of catches in this offense. You're not going to throw the ball enough. Barry was mentioned in 54-46. I think it could, and that's an insane run to pass split, right? That would be by far the highest in the league, run to pass. You're just not going to get the opportunities to have a lot of guys with a lot of yards, and you still have DK and Tyler here. You have D. Eskridge. There's just not going to be enough balls to go around at that point. So he'll be efficient, I think, with what he's given, but he's here to block. Right, Brendan?
Yeah. How long is the season? It's 18 weeks. So that's what, 4.5 months?
Mm-hmm.
4.5 months. I think it would take Will Dissly longer than 4.5 months to run 1,000 yards. So that's kind of a deal breaker.
He's had the injuries, Brendan. He's had the injuries, man. He's hobbled a little bit out there, you know? You run with that an Achilles tendon. You run with a cow tendon in your ankle. See how it goes. Oh, shoot. Thank you, Randall. And Randall, another donut for $2 says, if Kenneth Walker III misses time, let's call Wayne Gallman. This is an inside joke on this one, Brendan. Randall's had a lot of Wayne Gallman love for a long period back. Remember Wayne chopped us up in that New York Giant game a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I remember that.
So he's I call him poor man Eric Dickerson with his upright running style, but Randall was hot to trot for an offseason on us signing him, and he then went through free agency tier, wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, and then finally went through and got through. But thank you, Randall, and all of you guys for all the donations today. So kind. One thing, so we're onto a spot that has become a regular part of this BNB show now, Brendan, a part that I look to, and we were already talking a little bit about it before the show, and that is we are reaching a Mariners segment portion here of this. We're going to talk a little bit Mariners. Your Mariners today just swept the Anaheim Angels. They now sit at the head of the class as far as the wild card standing goes. How are you feeling about this team right now, Brendan?
I'm happy with it. I think that everything is set up for us to go on a late season run with this schedule and find our way to the playoffs. I think we've set up ourselves to where we have options with how we're going to deal with Kirby, because theoretically today was supposed to be his last start, but apparently we're open to throwing the rules of the inning limit out the door. And we can do that if we want to, but we don't have to because we traded for Castillo and didn't give up any of our starters in the process.
Right.
I think that the offense, it's not everything we want it to be overall, but you do see where we are now getting to a point where there's nobody in this lineup from day to day that just makes you want to turn the channel when they come up to the plate. There's no Ford. What was his name? Mike Ford, Henry Ford.
Yeah, I think it was Mike Ford.
There's no Justin Upton. There's nobody like that left. Everybody in this lineup, even the guys who aren't great, like Santana's OPS is probably down around 90 now. You still feel like they could come up and get it done. You still don't feel hopeless. And that's what I've been looking for a while with this team. So I'm really optimistic about where this season is headed right now.
I am too. I think we've got the road to the path to the playoffs set up and ahead of us. Anything can happen in the playoffs. I do think too, you've got to, with your outfield right now, Brendan, Tramel's going to come back off AAA. Unless he's completely demolishing and tearing the cover off the ball, I'm kind of good with just trotting out Haniger at right, and then Haggerty in left, and keeping Winker in the DH and flopping DH as you can at that point, unless Tramel can come back and play DH. But I kind of like that outfield right now with those three guys, with what they do with the bat and with what they do with their glove and with what they can do even from a speed quotient.
Yeah, it has to be that when the playoffs start. Winker has become a liability in the outfield, I think. He's a little slow. It's a problem. So, yeah, it's got to be Haniger, Haggerty, and Julio in the outfield. Winker can DH. And Santana can be a pinch hitter most of the time, I think, and that's fine.
Yeah, and that's the one thing Santana's done. He's taken over for Toro since Toro's left now as the clutch hitter in the lineup. When you need a big hit, he can, he might not get you consistent hits, but when you need a big hit, he can at least give you that. So I think that's your best pathway as well. And boy, Wink is painful in left field, especially in Seattle. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Couple other donations here. Garth Knight, good to see you in the chat, brother. I hope all is well. Thank you for the $10 donation. He says the Killer Bees are back. Did you all hear Monday Night Football switched its doubleheader to week 2 because they want all talented hands on deck for the opener? Wonder if there'll be a Manning cast. Ooh, this week 1 game is one of the big games in the NFL this season, not just for us Seattle fans, is it? Brendan, I mean, this is going to be a national game that people are not just the opening Monday night of the season. It's going to be, I would bet this does this draw the highest ratings for Monday Night Football this year? Week 1?
Maybe like there's a week 18 game that has massive playoff implications that beats it out. Oh, wait, no, that wouldn't be Monday. That would be Sunday night. Right. Because they don't play on Monday. So yeah, probably. Yeah.
And that's, for a team that everyone's saying has got the worst roster, to be able to say that, it speaks to how much interest this is going to have nationally. And as I say, Brendan, man, it would be fun to be in that stadium for that game because I think it's going to be kind of electric in that crowd. You know what I mean? I think it's going to be the uncertainty, Russ coming back, first game of the year, Monday Night Football. People have been out in the parking lot drinking all day, preparing, probably since Sunday preparing. It's going to be a fun affair. I can't wait on that one, Brendan. I'm so looking forward to that first game. For the first game of the season, that's a hell of a game. Barry Sotoro with a $5 donation. Thank you, Barry, and appreciate you, Garth. Says, how hyped would people be if Haggerty's last name was Kelnick? That's the sad part of this, isn't it, Brendan?
I mean, I think that the Haggerty hype is pretty high. I think that people realize now what's going on here. This guy's batting .320. He's plus speed, plus fielder. Little bit of power, not a lot, but a little bit. Yeah. I think people are reacting appropriately to the Haggerty thing now. Maybe not for a while, but I think people are starting to figure out we really have something here. This is not just a utility player.
I think Haggerty saves you, actually, rather than if Kelnick it's that he saved you from what's happened with Kelnick, and to a lesser degree, it's happened with Lewis, where those guys just aren't it. They're not there. They're maybe they'll take a little bit of time to get there, but they're not in that stage. This guy comes in and gives you that everything Brendan just said, from bat to glove to speed. I'm in many ways, he's kind of a little bit of a saver for this Mariners season, isn't he, Brendan? Where his injection in the lineup, obviously the return with Haniger. You may come back to look at this as it reminded me a little bit of this is going vague, Brendan, a little bit. Remember that second baseman for the Red Sox came in, the little small guy who came in there, won an MVP, I think, for them for a year. And he just came in there. They had a really good team, and he came in at the time, I think, as a rookie. and kind of provided that same bump. Somebody in the chat will remember the name on it, but it's
yeah, I'm off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but yeah, it's something kind of surprising. Maybe a more contemporary and relevant example would be somebody like Joe Juravicius in 2005 when we
there you
had all
go.
those receiver injuries, right?
Yeah, that's a great comparison. Great comparison. And I mean, hey, he's gonna here soon get enough at bats to be in contention for the for batting title. I don't know. It's probably pretty high up there, but I was looking at him. There's not that many guys hitting 300 in Major League Baseball. So you never know. The legend of I'm doing my Crow's Nest live stream shows, Brandon. I call him what we call him. He's Ham Swaggerty.
Yeah.
Drip so hard. So I hope he keeps it up. It's been awesome though for him to jump forward, and so needed, because again, I think if you don't have this in this lineup right now, you've got just a complete. You got bad play in the field. Number one, you lose, and then you've got another black hole in this lineup. And we've just had too many of those spots in this lineup at times in the year that we've been able to get through on it with pitching, defense, and starting pitching and relieving all that. But he's what could help give us this team hope for not just getting the playoffs, but making some noise in there once we get in there too, huh?
Right.
One more donation here, Brandon. $2 donation from Randall. Thank you again, Randall, all the donos. He says, I'm banking 1,000 for Will Disley. Brendan got to pay up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Brendan wants to lay down 1,000 on it. I think he's just playing the odds. It's probably not going to happen, but
yeah,
that's aggressive for Will. I mean,
look, you might lay down $1,000 to win $1 on that bet, so it's not really worth it. I mean, if you want to bet on him doing it, then you could probably go bet $1 and win 1,000 if he does it. But I don't even know how you get there. He's probably going to need at least 90 catches. And how is that even going to happen? I can't even imagine what it would take for that to happen.
Yeah, see, to me, I go back to Randall, just will he have the touches? Because if you're not getting the targets to do it, that's what the first part you need, beyond running great routes and catching every pass thrown to you, and then having yak like he had when he first came in, where he was really good after the catch too. To get to that point, you got to have a guy that's feeding you the rock enough to do it. And when you got a guy like Fant on this roster, who the Seahawks have already engaged the 5th-year option on Fant, so they're going to work Fant. They're going to want to try to, knowing the next 2 years he's going to be making pretty good money. They're going to want. I know Disley's making good money too, but I think they spent that money for Disley to block more than, he'll be good to catch if you got to go to him. But I think that they're really going to lean into Fant. I will say though, Brendan, the thing that does open this up maybe a tiny bit is this team will probably run the most 2 tight end sets in the entire NFL this year. That's it. And this preseason game matched that up too, because they ran a lot of 2 tight end sets in this last preseason game. So you never know,
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of that, but I don't think he's going to run enough routes.
Yeah, I'm with you on it. I can see him getting to 500-600 maybe on a high end, but I think that's probably his top end. And then you have that other specter looming over Disley, of course, which is if you do start to feed him a high end number of targets and is he able physically to hold up? Is that a possibility at that point? Cool. I think Randall's got one more. Brendan's getting his promise of WWD.
No,
Will this one.
I know. I remember. Believe me, I know what I said. And I'm very comfortable with that.
He's on it. Well, a lot of good things. Our Mariners are doing great. Seahawks football is just around the corner here, Brendan, to the start of the season. A lot to get hyped up with this team and both teams in the city right now. Sports maybe starting to turn around a little bit here. Maybe we're only a couple of years out from getting a Sonic team. I might be hoping a little bit too much on that, but let's get our Sonics back in here as well. But the team showed life, Brendan, this preseason game. It didn't show you the bottom of the barrel. Yeah, they didn't win the game, and you're in Pittsburgh, and there were some tough moments, bad tackling, but overall, this was an encouraging first step for us. And now let's continue on into the season and just see what happens. But it's going to be fun for us to monitor and track. Any final takeaways from you?
Oh, I think you sum it up really well. I liked what I saw in that first preseason game overall. I just hope we can build on it.
That's it. It's positive, and that's what we're looking for. Is this team? This season's about building, isn't it? A little bit, Brendan. Not to elongate this out, but it is a building year. This is show us you're building things. Show us you're climbing the steps. You're not to the top, but you're climbing up them. You're ascending, and that's all we're kind of looking for those signs on. Fair enough.
Yeah. That's all I want.
Last donation here, and then we will call it a day here. Thank you, Garth, for the $5 donation. He says, I see Disley on pace for 1,500 yards prior to an inevitable Week 7 season-ending injury. Well, wasn't he through his first 4 games? Didn't he have that when he first started out? He was on that ridiculous pace through 4 games where he was leading.
His second year, he was leading the league in targets for a tight end, and then he got hurt. It was the second year.
Okay. And he was just like, geez, really? I mean, you're going, wow, this guy's he's going to be better than Kittle. A little off on that one. He could block even better than Kittle. Kittle blocks good. This guy could block even better. Former defensive tackle. But I think he'll have a good year, though. I think he'll be a good blocker for us in that run blocking game. That'll be his most important quotient he's given this team, and why he, I think, mainly got paid. And that's it. You want to be a team that wants to run the ball a lot. You better have a good run blocking tight end. And the fact that he can do some things with his hands, route running to a degree on the other side of that makes him, fairly complete player rather than just a specialist in that regard. Awesome. Well, thank you. I really do appreciate, Brendan, as always, you jumping over here to my side of things here on the Hawks Nest. If you're not, please go over to Seahawks Brendan Nelson. Look for that YouTube channel. You find him out and do subscribe to him. He covers stuff daily on the basis, breaking news. He's all over it on his side of it. Just rounded out well over 9,000 subscribers on there. So he's kicking butt on his side of things. Appreciate you coming out here, man. I always love doing this. I'll be on his side of things next week. We'll be talking about this preseason game at that point in time. So let's get
you having me on. Sorry about the camera issues this week, but we'll see you next week.
That's the beauty of doing live shows, Brendan. You never know what you're going to get. You never know what could happen. So, you know what I mean? Bird might fly through the house. You never know. So thank you, brother. I really appreciate it. You're awesome as ever on this. And let's go get our first win of the season tomorrow. Does that sound good to you, Brendan? Can we just for the hell of it, let's go beat up on the Bears. Let's get the first thing out the way here. All right. It doesn't count, but let's just
this pass rush against that offensive line. I mean, I kind of want Justin Fields to not play this game because I don't want nothing bad to happen there because I like him.
Who breaks Justin Fields first, Darrell Taylor or Boye Mafe?
That's going to be Taylor this week. He got embarrassed last week with some of those missed tackles.
Taylor's coming back with a fire. I love it. He's coming back with a little bit of that angry fury. Sorry, Justin. Sorry. It's on you this week. It's not your fault, but you're going to have to suffer the pain and suffering of that Taylor machine coming down upon you. Thank you guys for watching. Please hit that like button on your way out the door. Get subscribed if you're not already subscribed, please. I would appreciate it. And do the same for Seahawks Brendan Nelson. Beyond all that, don't you ever forget, never forget now, never forget. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.